Time. Where is it going? June keeps ticking away and the 2022 NHL entry draft is quickly approaching, and so some sacrifices here have to be made. What sacrifices, you ask? Full-length scouting reports for David Jiricek, Joakim Kemell, and Nemec. So in this scouting wrap-up video, my last video before my full first round mock draft later this month, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss it, I have briefer editions of my normal former Scouts Take videos about each player. They still cover a lot, don't worry, and give plenty of well worth it info. So, without further ado, make sure to like this video so other hockey fans can find it, and we'll get started. There's no sugarcoating it. Jiricek is possibly the worst skater I've ever scouted, and I've scouted 14-year-olds. Not only is his stride choppy and short, but it's ineffective. Rather than a normal stride where the player extends their legs out, pushing along the ice, generating momentum and speed, Jiricek looks like he's stomping around. This to me is by far and away why I have doubts about his potential in the NHL. His transitions are bad to say the least, and I worry about guys just walking right by him. That said, he is still fast somehow. He can help lead rushes by his team and get back defensively when he has to, and sure, skating is coachable, and he can be trained and worked with, but do you really want to spend the next 3 years of his development just teaching him how to maximize his skating at an NHL level? Now you may have also noticed that his stick looks rather long, and that's because it is. Not only does his 6'3" frame mean that he's going to have a longer stick, but his hand placement is really what gives this optical illusion that he has a comically large twig in his hand. Jiricek has the hand placement of a forward. This is partly why his wrist shot has so much power and why he can be so accurate with it, as well as his above average puck handling. Seriously, he can work the blue line and make some magic happen on the power play, and his slapper is also ++. However, his hand placement does mean he's less solid with his stick defensively when he has to battle someone. One of the things most people focus on is his size that he hasn't really figured out how to use yet. He struggles along the boards as he's too top heavy, as most taller players are at his age, but he also doesn't know how to lay anybody out. This is also where the skating could come into play. You need to be able to not just keep up with guys, but also make those micro adjustments last minute to really lay down the hammer, and I'm not convinced that he's going to be able to do this at the NHL level. He understands the game defensively and puts himself in the right spots to pick off a pass or make a play, but I'd like to see him defend his own net with a little more aggressiveness and use his size to make it harder on guys driving at his goaltender. Overall, I see Jiricek as the boom or bust pick in the top part of this draft. Defensemen always need more time to develop, and he definitely is 2-ish years from cracking an NHL roster. But if you can harness his offensive abilities and teach him to use his size, you're looking at a potential top pairing defenseman. If you can't, and his skating is a problem at the next level, you're looking at the next defensive bust that unfortunately had all the pieces, but could never put them together. Joakim Kemell is such an interesting player. Trapped on what might be Liga's worst club, they had a negative 82 goal differential last year, he was still able to shine when he was on the ice. How? Well, the gold helmet certainly helped. But really, by being a solid, yet sometimes boring, playmaker and finisher that I would want on my team any day of the week. And that's what makes him special. The little unexciting things are the things that shine and make him interesting. His shot is NHL caliber for sure, his passing is good and will only improve, but his smarts and hockey sense is what I want to focus on. I was trained in the Portland Winterhawks organization, which valued hockey sense above all. It didn't matter if the kid was tiny or slow or whatever, because at the end of the day, if they can see the game, limit mistakes, make good reads, they will find a way to be effective regardless of their shortcomings. Nick Patan being a great example of this. Smart player, too small by most accounts for the NHL, and yet here he is all these years later because he is smart enough to do whatever you need him to do. Now, Joakim Kemell is a much more skilled player than Nick Patan, so don't take that as a player comp at all. I was only using it to explain why I love him and why I think he's only going to get better as he joins other top players. He finds open ice in the offensive zone to make himself a great passing target and gives himself time and space when he does receive that pass. He can circle the zone and suck defenders in, opening up spaces for his teammates just like all good playmakers do. And these are skills that are frankly being limited right now by the team he's playing on. Joining an NHL club is only going to allow him to use these skills more and more and to be far more effective with them than he is right now. As for defense and forechecking, here are two plays that highlight his abilities as well as his smarts. On this first play, you're going to see his defensive ability. As you can tell, he's skating back with the defenseman, and he's doing a really good job. His angles are good, his skating backwards is great, but this is what really impresses me. He gets in front of him, uses his stick to make sure he can't go around him, and then lays down the old school hip check. This is a fantastic play, and one that you just don't see a lot of 18, 17-year-olds make. And here he is on the forecheck. You can see he's taking away the passing lane with his stick while taking away the other passing lane with his body, all the while putting pressure on the defenseman, forcing him back against the boards and into a corner. That level of aggressiveness and smarts is just not something you're used to seeing from a lot of younger players. And then, after the turnover is eventually forced, he can finish it up with a great play that even he can't believe he missed on. And finally, I want to show you the play in which I fell in love with Joakim Kemell, and why I would want him on my NHL club. As you can see, his team is cycling the puck around the zone. They're trying to find a way to break through. But watch him here. As his team is moving, he himself is always on the move, making sure he keeps this passing lane right here always open and available. Now, while his team doesn't use it, in the NHL, you can bet your bottom dollar that someone is going to use that passing lane to him because it's the quickest, most effective way to get it across the ice. That results in a goal 100% of the time. And that's all made possible by Joakim Kemell's hockey smarts. He's not necessarily trying to open up a passing lane between him and the most immediate puck carrier because that's impossible. There's just too many bodies there. But he can see that only two things can happen here. The first is that the puck carrier passes to this open shooter in a good spot, which is what he tries to do, and that shooter shoots and scores, it ends up covered, or there's a rebound, which works for Kemell as he has given himself an open lane to the net where he can fight for it. The second option is that the puck makes its way to this other teammate, who is both the safety valve passing option for the puck carrier and is in the best spot to intercept a defensive clear, which is ultimately what happens. You gotta love those reliable finish board and out clears. So Kemell puts himself in the best place for either play. If the shooter shoots and there's a rebound, he's there for it. But if that other teammate gets it, Kemell is going to be his best passing option. The wild part is in him figuring this out in real time. Is some of that coaching? Of course, but that means he's listened to his coaches in practice and watched film and actually absorbed all that knowledge. Otherwise, he'd drift down towards the net and sit there like most players would and take himself out of the play that ultimately develops. This play is the textbook definition of thinking 2 steps ahead. And then, of course, he has the finishing ability to score, despite the fact that his team wasn't quick getting the puck over to him and the other team was able to set up for it. But his score puts the cherry on top of what might arguably be my favorite play out of all the tape I've watched scouting for this upcoming draft. Simon Nemec is a very good defensive prospect. He can skate like the wind, play make like you want to see, and has an active stick in the defensive zone. At every level he has shined as a good option for his team. My only issue is that he lacks the wow factor. Offensively minded defensemen are a definite player type in the NHL and really hockey in general, and while he checks all the boxes of one, he doesn't make me stop and stare with my jaw on the floor. Because the universe is nice, it blessed us with a great apples-to-apples comparison last season. Brant Clark was the top pick by the Kings in last year's draft, and he too played in the Slovak main league, so we can look at his tape and directly compare it to Nemec. Where Clark wowed me, and I was very high on him last year if you remember, by just skating around and through guys, Nemec stays back and plays the outside. Sure, that's more of what he'd be doing in the NHL, but if you're going to be a top 5 pick in the draft, I want to see you feasting on players at this level of competition. Clark would dangle and rip pucks past goaltenders, where Nemec just makes a move and scores. And that is really their difference, I guess, at the end of the day, in the language I would use to describe them. Spicy adverbs for Clark, tried and true descriptors for Nemec. The one thing that does excite me about Nemec's game, though, is his passing. No-look passes and quick, last-second reads leading to great tape-to-tape passes or to set up somebody's one-timer are a fairly regular occurrence in his game, and that is something that will 100% translate to the NHL and help him out running things like a power play. Where could he improve? Being a little bit more physical. He's not too small, being listed at 6'1", and he's not super thin either, but you never really see him play the body at all, and that is something that he's going to have to work into his game if he wants to excel at the NHL level. All that said, however, Nemec can play and has a very safe floor, and to his credit, as the year progressed, he stepped up his game and started having more flashy moments, scoring a ton on his team's playoff run and at the World Championships. It's possible that this late season addition, if you will, is really just him coming into his own as a top tier guy, only time will tell. But even if he isn't, and he never turns into the guy leading the charge for an NHL team, he's not going to be worse than a second pairing NHL defenseman either. For reference, think Vince Dunn or Tyson Barrie. Super solid guys who for sure help their team, especially on the power play, but they aren't stars and they do have some limitations. The fact though is that that's his low side, and as a defenseman, that is remarkable and should make him a top 5 or 6 pick in this year's draft. Hey, thanks for making it through the video. As I said before, if you could like this video so other hockey fans could find it, that would be awesome. And subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of our extensive draft coverage as it happens over the course of the next month. See you next time.